Okay, so we are going to talk about 2 and 4 stitch decreases in brioche. And so we're going to do the brioche left leaning decrease, and we're going to do the brioche right leaning decrease. And then we're going to do what in brioche is equivalent to like a center double decrease in knitting, where the decrease will actually go, straight up the middle versus leaning one direction or the other. So we're going to first start with the brioche, the brLsl, or the brioche left leaning stitch. And I'm doing this in my dark color because the spine, right, my knit side on my dark side is that dark color. And that's the one that I want coming together. So this is what it looks like when it's executed. So I'm going to move forward, do my yarn forward, slip one yarn over. My next stitch is a knit stitch, right? Yarn forward, slip one yarn over. And now this is where I'm going to do my next decrease. So to do a left leaning, I'm going to just slip that first brioche knit stitch knitwise. I'm going to knit the next 2 stitches together, which means my purl stitch and my next brioche stitch. I'm going to knit those 2 little guys together carefully. There we go. And then I'm going to take that slip stitch, right, the entire slip stitch, both strands of that, and just slip it over top of the decrease stitch. And you'll notice I did maintain my yarn over that I needed there. So just to show that to you again, let me switch to throwing. I'm going to bring my yarn forward. I'm going to slip a stitch, right? I'm going to knit my next one. That's my yarn forward, slip one yarn over. I'm going to go ahead and do my yarn over, right, for that next stitch. And I'm going to slip it. And then this is where I'm going to do the decrease, is over these 3 stitches. So I'm going to slip that first stitch knitwise. I'm going to go ahead and knit these next 2 stitches together as if they were one, like that, maintaining that little yarn over. And then I'm going to carefully take that brioche knit stitch right over top and get my beautiful left leaning decrease. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a right leaning decrease. So you can see how they kind of become little paired decreases. That's my left and this is my right. The right leaning decrease is kind of fun. I'm going to go ahead and just move forward a stitch as well. So I have my yarn forward, slip one yarn over. Going to go ahead and do my brioche knit. Yarn forward, slip one yarn over. This yarn over I need to make sure I maintain while I'm doing the rest of it. I'm now going to do my decrease over these 3 stitches. So I'm going to, just like last time, I'm going to go ahead and slip that first brioche knit knitwise. I'm then going to knit that little purl stitch. I'm going to then slip the brioche knit stitch over top of the newly made stitch. That stitch gets transferred back onto the left hand needle, and I'm going to then flip that next brioche stitch over top, and to finish, that stitch goes back onto my right hand needle. And that is the full thing. So let me just switch to throwing for you real quick. I'm going to bring my yarn forward. I'm going to go ahead and slip my next one and knit just to give myself a little bit of space. And again, yarn forward, slip one yarn over. I'm going to maintain that little yarn over by just keeping my yarn in the front while I decrease my stitches right here. Slip that first stitch knitwise. Knit the one that you would normally go ahead and yarn forward, slip one yarn over. You're just going to actually work the stitch. Transfer the stitches on your right hand needle over top. Transfer that stitch back onto your left hand needle. And transfer that next stitch right over top. And then eventually, or finally rather, transfer that stitch back to your right hand needle because it's already been worked. And that is your right leaning decrease. Okay, so now we've done our left leaning and we've done our right leaning, and now we're going to do a center decrease. And you can see how it can impact the look of your work depending on what style you're going for. This is a super fun decrease. It's actually a lot of back and forth, and I'm going to show it to you, but it takes some practice. So I've gone ahead and just worked forward a couple stitches. That's my yarn over, slip one, yarn forward, slip one yarn over. And now it's this stitch out of all of these. I'm going to work this whole group right here. And it's this stitch that I want to look like it is coming up the center. So that's why it's like a center double decrease. So to do that, I have to move the first brioche knit stitch out of the way, and I have to move the second stitch out of my way by slipping them knitwise. I'm going to grab a locking stitch marker of any sort, and I'm going to take that middle stitch off, and I'm just going to have that hang to the front. If you're super paranoid, go ahead and lock your stitch marker. I usually don't. Make sure you're maintaining that original yarn over right there. You're going to go ahead and work that next stitch. That one gets knitted. Then you're going to pass the very first of the, whichever order you want to say, you're going to pass the most adjacent stitch over top. So this was the single one. That gets passed over top of the stitch I just worked. That stitch gets transferred back to your left-hand needle. This brioche knit stitch gets transferred over. That stitch goes back over to your right-hand needle. This brioche knit gets transferred right over. Then you're going to pick this little stitch back up. Take that guy off. And you are going to transfer this stitch back over and transfer your brioche knit over top. And that gives you that beautiful center double decrease. Okay, so I've moved forward a couple of stitches so that I'm not interfering with anything here. This is going to be my yarn over that I'm going to maintain. So I'm going to bring my yarn forward, slip one yarn over, and I'm going to again be working these 5 stitches so that this one in the middle is my center spine that will go all the way up. So I'm going to move my first brioche knit to the side, move my second little purl stitch to the side. I'm going to grab my handy dandy locking stitch marker. I'm going to pull that stitch off and leave it in the front. I'm then going to knit the first single stitch that's by itself to my left-hand needle. I'm going to come over here and grab the single stitch and pass it over. I'm then going to transfer that stitch back to the left-hand needle. I'm going to grab this brioche knit and pass it over. Transfer that stitch back to the right-hand needle. Grab my brioche knit on this side and transfer it over. Pick up, and you see how I didn't lock it this time? It's pretty easy peasy. Pick up that stitch from the center, put my locking stitch marker aside, transfer my stitch back to the left-hand needle, transfer that brioche knit right over top, and my finishing touch is to transfer that stitch back to my right-hand needle because it's already been worked. And that's what your center double decrease or your br4st brioche 4-stitch decrease looks like.